John, I'm just overwhelmed by how well and thoughtfully you picked all the readings and hymns and everything today. Jan put up with endless emails from me with picky questions, and our pianist and videographer, everybody. And I always enjoy speaking here behind this transparent lectern because I'm short. And some places I go, I just think that people feel like they see this decapitated head talking. It's kind of creepy. So, before we begin meditation, I want to tell you all that the National Audubon Society is asking people to turn off all unnecessary lights during the autumn bird migration, beginning tomorrow through November 30th and between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. Now please center yourselves for meditation. Close your eyes and inhale slowly, feeling your tummy move out as far as it can. Exhale slowly. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. As you continue breathing slowly and deeply, feel your muscles relax, beginning at your scalp, through your forehead and the muscles around your eyes, eyelids, cheeks, tongue, and jaw relax. Feel the relaxation running down your neck, through your shoulders, down your arms, right to your fingertips. Feel the relaxation flowing through your torso, down your legs, all the way to the tips of your toes. Now imagine that you're in a very safe place outdoors at night, lying back in a lounge chair looking up at the sky. You see countless stars, as if you were far away from the city lights. You begin to notice that in small areas of the sky, the stars are hidden for a split second, as if a tiny cloud had passed. Then you notice that these are not clouds, but birds flying south. As you continue watching, you begin to pick out the shapes of the birds. More and more birds flying south. Now picture the birds in the forest, fields, and bodies of water of Central America. They have plenty to eat. Now it's springtime. The birds are in their beautiful breeding plumage, well-fed, healthy, and ready to fly north again. Now gently get ready to bring your mind back. Move your fingers, your shoulders, and open your eyes. How's that? Okay. My first reading is from World Vision, which is a Christian charity. When women are living safe, fulfilled, and productive lives, they can reach their full potential, contributing their skills to the workforce, and can raise happier and healthier children. They are also able to help fuel sustainable economies and benefit societies and humanity at large. Second reading is from the UN Secretary General. I refer to SDG 5, that means Dedicated Goal for Gender Equality, as the docking station for all the goals, because we know that realizing gender equality and women's rights holds the greatest potential to eliminate poverty and hunger, achieve quality education for everyone, and achieve all the sustainable goals by 2030. The title of my talk today is the same as that of my most recent book, Women Can Renew the World In, and So Can You. I'd like to tell you how my ideas for this book developed, which will also give you an overview and some takeaways. I think most of us believe in equality for women, but not everyone understands that equality doesn't just help women. In country after country, study after study, both economists and sociologists have learned that the best way to improve the well-being of an entire society is to improve the status of women. Years ago, I came to that same conclusion from a different perspective. Observing how the women I trained took to communication skills that they could use in discussing touchy topics and dealing with differences of opinion. Anyone can learn these skills. I've seen success in trainees and clients of all genders and gender identities. But in general, and with many exceptions, women and often trans people especially tend to take to these techniques. Many dislike confrontation and argument. They're relieved to find that there's another way, and better yet, that the other way is actually more effective in obtaining what they seek, yet without depriving others. How many of you have tried to argue with someone who strongly disagreed with you about something like gay rights or climate change or economics? Hands up. Okay? Now, hands up if you think you changed the other person's mind in 50% of those conversations. 30%. 10%. 0. If you enter the words, "When did you choose to be straight?" into a search engine, you'll find a video of a man who approached people and asked them if they thought being gay was a choice. If the subject said they believed it was a choice, or a matter of upbringing, or some combination, the interviewer then asked, "When did you choose to be straight?" Notice the interviewer's bland, professional tone of voice. Just hearing the question, subjects then realize that they did not make a choice, and often they then accepted that it's not a choice for gays either. That's one skill I teach, asking rather than telling. More specifically, asking open questions that can't be answered yes or no. That's only one of many productive discussion skills in my book. Not only do women often take to the skills, sometimes they use them intuitively. During the Industrial Revolution in England, both men and women formed mutual aid groups. The men's organizations tended to be hierarchical, with elected leaders, parliamentary-type procedures, and a lot of rules. For example, every week each man would pay a certain amount of money into the organization's fund. Then, in the event of emergency, he was entitled to withdraw a certain amount. The women's organizations, there may not have been elected leaders. The leader, if any, might be a volunteer. They had few, if any, rules. They often discussed things in a conversational, collaborative manner. At a meeting, someone might say, "Bess is expecting a baby soon. Who can cover which of her shifts while she recovers?" Various women volunteered for different shifts until they were all covered. This is behind the first part of my book title, Women Can Renew the World If. If what? If they have more equal status, visibility, and credibility as men. Women can model better ways of dealing with people so that others can learn from their examples, and entire society benefits. And us against them instinct evolved back in prehistoric times when life meant kill or be killed, eat or be eaten, be right or be wrong. Get the hunting strategy wrong and you could die. Pick the poison berries instead of the good berries and you could die. This instinct remains hardwired into the human brain. So being wrong registers as a threat, just like a saber-toothed cat. When we argue with someone, that means we think they're wrong. Their instinct is to fight back by arguing back. But that instinct no longer serves us well nowadays. I'd like to see a statistically significant number of people collaborating, cooperating, and getting more of what they seek without taking advantage of others. I believe that when you work the numbers, the fastest way to achieve this is to improve the status of women. What about the second part of the title? And so can you. Readers of any gender or gender identity can begin learning productive discussion skills like open questions through the how-to sections at the ends of the chapters. In the final chapter, I laid out a 30-day plan for practicing the skills introduced in the preceding chapters. I know that men too can learn these skills because I've taught them, I've seen their success, and some men do some of the skills naturally. Trainees often have an epiphany. For a lot of women, some men, and I believe a lot of trans people, the epiphany is like, it's a huge sigh of relief. Like they've been walking around in the wrong size shoes for years and they finally got some that fit. For quite a few men and some women in trans, the epiphany is like, wow, this is just the opposite of the way I've always done things, the way most people do things, and it actually works better. I never imagined. My book also discusses factors that hold women back, keeping them in lower status, less visible positions. So readers have both the information to discuss these factors knowledgeably and the skills to discuss them productively. However, readers can and should apply the same skills to other topics, from climate change to your neighbor's naughty dog. One of the factors that hold women back is implicit bias. In Chapter 7, I described a flip-flop hypothetical world where a little boy named Kevin grows up hearing our species called womankind, or just woman. Adult females are usually called women, but adult males are often called boys. When a man marries, he gives up his mother's surname and takes that of his wife, and much, much more. Then I ask a simple question. Would you want a son of yours to grow up in that world? First, however, I needed the reader to understand the power of such language and other influences or triggers that fly below our conscious radar screen. So Chapter 4 gives examples of the power of subconscious triggers. To name just a couple. Dan Ariely writes of a jewel merchant who came into a lot of brown pearls. They were initially considered worthless, but when the merchant displayed the brown pearls, along with height, suggesting that they were a hot new item, at substantially higher prices than pearl-colored pearls, people actually bought the brown pearls at the high price. Robert Cialdini writes that when a group of homeowners were shown a picture of an ugly yard sign that read, "Be a safe driver," so large that it obstructed the view of the house, only 17% agreed to display the sign. But in a group that had been primed earlier by accepting a small drive safely window sticker, 76% later accepted the big ugly yard sign. These phenomena result from more instincts that no longer serve us. The business with the yard sign is from our instinct to remain consistent with positions we've taken. When they accepted the little sticker, they made a public statement. They took a position, so then it was hard to resist the sign. gave too many examples of sub-radar influence to mention here. It's hard to accept that sub-radar or subconscious influences create so many of our beliefs and decisions. But in fact, you can pick up any issue of psychology today and find examples of studies in which people behaved in ways they never would have imagined. Considering the strength of such sub-radar influence, is it any wonder if little Kevin, growing up in that flip-flop hypothetical world, would think of himself in lower status than girls and women? So what does our real-life culture teach a little girl? Well, now I have 4 factors that few people see as interrelated. And are those on the order of service, like a pentagram? Okay. They're like 4 of 5 points in a pentagram, and every different point is connected with every other point on the web. So I have 4 at this point. Sub-radar or subconscious influence, bias against and suppression of women, societal well-being, and productive discussions. To interest people in a book about the interrelationship of these factors, I wanted a tangible, real-life jumping-off point, a familiar topic that grabbed the attention of lots of people to serve as a primary example on which to illustrate the productive discussion skills. I found this jumping-off point in the Me Too movement. Not only did it attract a lot of public attention, but also gender-based mistreatment is another major factor, along with implicit bias, that holds women back from improving their status. Also, like implicit bias, the power of sexual harassment and abuse is far underestimated. This jumping-off point allowed me to discuss harassment and abuse at length, so that the reader fully understands why it's so powerful and what it does to those who survive it. So again, the readers get both the information and the skills to discuss this very important issue. It became the 5th point in my web. So it's like the interconnected web of creation or a spider's web. You touch one part of it and all the others are affected. I anticipated possible questions that people might ask in the text. For example, question: I know a woman who's extremely argumentative and competitive. What about her? Answer: I also know women who are competitive and argumentative. They're the reasons I keep repeating words like many women along with some men, and on average and with many exceptions. This is not about painting every single woman and every single man with the same brush. It's about noticing trends in significant numbers. That's how I see renewal of the world. Significant numbers of people using and modeling these skills. If I could answer all the possible questions in 20 minutes, I would have written a whole book about them, but I'll cover a few more in the time I have. So one might think or ask, some people seem to be so rabidly misogynist or homophobic or racist or whatever. It's hard to imagine that any kind of skills would get through to them. And yes, it's tempting to think in terms of changing the minds of the most fanatic people. Fanatics are the ones who get your dander up. But here again, an instinct might not be the best guide to success. In one of my how-to sections, I discuss a sort of a cost-benefit analysis. A guy named Luke has 3 co-workers who question, to various degrees, the honesty of Me Too whistleblowers. Joe angrily exclaims, I know all those women are lying, they only outreach men, and all they want is money. Peter shakes his head and says, it's really hard for me to believe all these stories when you consider that so many of the men accused are wealthy. Mary says, I've been inappropriately touched at work myself, Yet I can't help thinking about the wealth of the men accused, and I can't help wondering if all of these stories are absolutely true. Well, Luke could spend a tremendous amount of time trying to change angry Joe's mind with low chances of benefit. His time is better spent conversing with Peter and Mary. He works the numbers. Another thing one might ask is, what can I do about abusive workplaces where I don't work? It's true that we can't directly affect the practices of workplaces where we don't work. What we can do is learn and model the skills, helping women who also model these skills to move them toward mainstream practice and away from competition and arguing all the time. We can also replace language that supports implicit bias. The last chapter, in addition to the 30-day skills practice plan, includes a checklist of implicit bias language and how to replace it. One might think the EEOC has eliminated sexual harassment and abuse. Well, things are better, but such mistreatment still occurs, and not just in workplaces. It even happens in congregations. A woman once told me that her spouse used to go into rages, throwing, smashing, and breaking things in the house. The message she got from him was, "This is what I can do to you if you cross me." When people are abused by non-consensual touch, for example, the message is, "I can rape you if you cross me." Joanne Evans Gardner wrote, "Rapists perform for sexist males the same function that the Ku Klux Klan performed for racist whites. They keep women in their place through fear, and that place is below men." On January 6, 2021, I watched live coverage of the attack on the U.S. Capitol on CBS. Late that evening, one of the last people to leave was a man wearing a shirt that read, "Trump those bitches." To me, that man's shirt was like the counterpart of a white robe and hood. We can, however, improve things. Maybe we've been there, but we have not yet done that. And we can improve things. Ultimately, together, we can renew the world. Now, some of you may be thinking, okay, Margaret, this is all well and good, but we don't have time to just slowly but surely improve our culture. People are suffering right now because of several recent court decisions. We need to take action. Well, I never said just renew our culture. We can do both. Take short-term action to relieve suffering on a large scale, and also begin renewing the world by learning and using more productive ways of dealing with individuals and modeling those ways for others. If we only solve specific problems, but not the ultimate cause of those problems, more problems will arise. The cause is the currently predominant practice of argument and competition. I invite you to join me in replacing that with productive discussions. I wish I could hang around after the service, but unfortunately I can't. Please feel free to contact me with any more questions you may have. You can use the contact page on my website, persuasioncoach.com, or I am hereby giving the church leadership permission to give my phone number and email address to any member of the congregation who wants it. Thanks again. Amen. Blessed be.